The time is now for the Dr. Bob Sports Podcast. I am Tanner. I am our head of analytics, and I am in my 8th year working alongside Bob to originate our NFL and college basketball bets. And today, as always, I am joined by our digital media specialist, Grant. We are 10 days away from college hoops starting.
Yes, we are, and you can head to the website if you're interested in signing up for the college basketball service. Our best bets are 55% over the last 4 years, and that is on a lot of volume.
Yeah, I think we've had over 2,000 best bets in those 4 years, and I'll be doing a college basketball future on this podcast next week.
Okay, well, we will be looking forward to that, but let's jump into our first segment here, and we've got the free bet of the week. And last week we had the Eagles -3, which was a winner, but we also had the Jets -1.5, which was a loser. So that now makes us 11-4-1 on podcast sites and totals dating back to last year. But who are you going with this week, Tan?
This week, we're going to do Giants +6 over the Steelers. So the Giants offense fell apart last week in the first game without starting left tackle Andrew Thomas. And we talked about that in last week's podcast. That was the main reason why we were on the Eagles there, because we loved the matchup for Josh Sweat across from the backup left tackle there in New York. But we could count on TJ Watt not exploiting that matchup this week. Watt only had 7 snaps across from left tackles in the past 3 seasons. So he's pretty consistently across from right tackles. And so I don't think he's going to blow up the game in the same way we saw Josh Sweat do. And then Cameron Hayward, the other major threat on Pittsburgh's offensive line, is going to be somewhat limited by left guard John Runyon, who ranks 17th in pass blocking efficiency. Brian Daboll's offense has been really good against cover 3 since he got to New York, and Pittsburgh's defense leads the NFL in cover 3 rate. The Giants' yards per pass play against cover 3 is 24% of their yards per pass play against other coverages. That's 8th in the league.
All right, well, looking at the Steelers' offense, what'd you take away from Russ's first game?
I mean, it's hard to argue with the results there, right? The Steelers averaged 3.4 points per drive, which is the highest they've had in any game in the last 3 seasons. Najee Harris was great on the ground at over 100 rushing yards, and I think they'll continue giving him the ball because New York's defense is allowing a league-high 5.4 yards per rush.
Yeah, and it wasn't just Najee and Russ. I mean, George Pickens had a breakout game. He went 5 for 111 and 1.
Yeah, and they really set it up with the play action game there. Wilson averaged 16.7 yards per pass play on under center play action dropbacks, and George Pickens had a season high 16.6 air yards per target. And I think the Giants are going to have to send extra help to Pickens to limit those downfield targets, but it's possible that Russell Wilson is just not going to have enough time to throw the deep balls here. Steelers center Zach Frazier remains out. He's 5th in pass blocking efficiency, and starting right guard James Daniels is also sidelined. So him and Frazier are worth 1.3 points according to our numbers. And so you've got backup center Ryan McCollum and backup guard Mason McCormick across from New York interior defender Dexter Lawrence, who somehow leads the NFL with 9 sacks from the nose tackle position. He is completely going to destroy the Steelers offense in this game.
Yeah, and you also have to worry about the Giants' edge defenders that have actually been really solid this year, even though they've been without Kayvon Thibodeau.
Yeah, I mean, Brian Burns has 27 pressures. Azeez Ojulari ranked 17th in pass rushing efficiency, and the pair is going to have a favorable matchup there across from Broderick Jones, who surrendered a league-high 6 sacks. So I just think it's going to be really hard for the Steelers to win by margin here in a game with such a low total, and we think the Giants should be only about 4.5-point dogs in this game.
All right, well, let's shift it over, and let's look at the new wide receiver that's on the move. We got D-Hop going to the Chiefs.
Yeah, the Titans had about a 10% chance of getting the first overall pick in next year's draft, and they're looking to increase those chances now by trading away their top wide receiver after that 1-5 start. So Hopkins was averaging 1.64 yards per route run, and backup Nick Westbrook-Akine is averaging just 0.38 yards per route run. Hopkins leaving is going to be about a half-point downgrade to Tennessee's offense by our numbers, but I don't know that you can upgrade Kansas City's offense quite yet, just because I don't think Hopkins is going to run more than 15 routes in this game, and we could talk about his impact for Kansas City's offense next week after he's had another week of practice in that Andy Reid system.
All right, we've got a lot of movement at the quarterback position this week, and we're going to start in Miami. And we've got Tua coming back from that concussion that he had in week 2. So he's been on the IR, and ever since then, Miami's offense hasn't had a positive EPA in a game since he went out.
Yeah. The backups just could not get the ball to Miami's weapons. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle combined for 4 targets and 19 yards last week. But with Tua back, Tyreek averaged 2.33 yards per route run in the first 2 weeks. That was 8th in the NFL. I think the all-pro wide receiver should have a favorable matchup this week across from rookie cornerback Max Melton, because Cardinals starting cornerback Sean Murphy-Bunting is likely going to be out. So I think, it seems obvious to say, but Tua coming back here is a massive upgrade for Miami's offense, and they're all of a sudden, a top 10 unit once again.
Yeah, I think the big question here is, how is their line going to match up? We need Tua to have a lot of protection.
Well, this week, with Arizona's 6th highest blitz rate in the NFL, not great, right? The Dolphins' offensive line has not been great picking up blitzes this season. Miami's yards per attempt against the blitz is only 70% of their yards per attempt against zone. So one option for Tua to go there when Arizona sends extra pass rushers is in the screen game to Devon Achane, who's 3rd in yards per route run among running backs, because the Cardinals' defense is 31st in receiving success rate allowed to opposing running backs.
All right, well, shifting over to the Panthers, it looks like Bryce Young is getting the keys again after Andy Dalton got hurt.
Yeah, and I was kind of optimistic about this matchup for Carolina's offense when it was Andy Dalton. Carolina's been a lot better against man and zone coverage this season. Denver's 4th highest man coverage rate. And then it looks like the Panthers are getting back starting right tackle Taylor Moton and wide receiver Adam Thielen. Damian Lewis on the inside should be, a pretty good matchup to limit Zach Allen, who leads interior defenders with 39 pressures. But I'm not sure that any of that is going to make a difference this week. Bryce Young is averaging just 4 yards per pass play throughout his career, and I'd say he's about a 2.5-point downgrade from Dalton by our metrics. So it's a big break for the Broncos here.
All right, well, looking at the Browns, the Deshaun Watson experience is finally over, and you never cheer for injury, but we can cheer for Jameis Winston starting in the NFL again.
Yeah, this is one of those rare occasions where the backup is an upgrade over the starter. I think we can all agree that Watson was only starting because the Browns had invested an incredible amount in him with multiple draft picks and an unprecedented, fully guaranteed 5-year, $230 million contract.
Yeah, that might go down as the worst contract ever. But what are you expecting from Jameis going forward?
Jameis has been a good NFL player when he's given the opportunity, right? His career, 6.8 yards per pass play. That would be 12th in the NFL this season. And even when Jameis hasn't been a full-time starter, as a backup in the last 5 seasons, he's averaged 0.10 EPA per play. And you compare that to Watson, who was averaging negative 0.23 EPA per play. So Cleveland traded Amari Cooper, which, is not great for Jameis, but David Njoku has stepped in, and he's had a target shares of 30% and 29% over the last 2 weeks. And Njoku has a favorable matchup on Sunday because the Ravens are 29th in EPA per target allowed to opposing tight ends.
Yeah, and to add to your point, it also looks like the Ravens are going to be without Marlon Humphrey.
And Humphrey, one of the best nickelbacks in the NFL here, he is conceding just 0.56 yards per cover snap in the slot. And with Humphrey out, they're going to have to put Kyle Hamilton in the slot, who is allowing over 1 yard per cover snap in the slot. And it just takes away from the flexibility they have with Kyle Hamilton. So it makes this Ravens defense more rigid. Humphrey is worth almost a point to the Ravens defense by our metrics. And then on the other side, you've got Cleveland's offensive line getting healthier with both starting tackles back on the field. They've got 4 out of the 5 starters in the lineup, which is, the first time they can say that all season.
All right, well, the Raiders are giving the keys back to the man in the van, as Aiden O'Connell is now expected to miss 4 to 6 weeks with a broken thumb.
And Minshew is a slight upgrade over O'Connell. He's averaging a half yard per pass play more than O'Connell this year. And Minshew's going to benefit from getting Jacoby Myers back. He's 14th in EPA per target. I don't know, though, if Myers is going to have a great matchup this week across from Trent McDuffie, who completely shut down the 49ers last week. He conceded only one reception for 15 yards in man coverage against the 49ers. But if they can get Jacoby Myers matched up across from the Chiefs' backup cornerbacks, it could help the Raiders offense because the Chiefs will be without cornerback Jalen Watson, maybe for the year after he suffered that fractured ankle in last Sunday's win.
So what are you expecting the Raiders to attack on offense to have success this week?
I mean, it's got to be Bowers, right? His 27 receptions over the past 3 games is the most in a 3-game stretch by a rookie tight end in NFL history. And the Chiefs defense has not been good against tight ends. They're 26th in success rate allowed to opposing tight ends. So when Minshew has enough time, he's definitely going to be trying to get the ball to Bowers. But the Chiefs defensive line has a great matchup this week against the Las Vegas offensive line if right guard Dylan Parham can't come back, because that means it's going to be backup Jordan Meredith and rookie DJ Glaze across from edge defender George Karlaftis and interior defender Chris Jones this week. So, I mean, those two are going to completely wreck the game unless Minshew can get the ball out really quickly.
Yeah, it's kind of a nightmare for Minshew there. But let's shift it over to our next segment. We've got stock up, stock down, and whose stock are you buying this week?
I'm going to go with Stephon Diggs. So we've kind of seen the Texans offense struggle without Nico Collins here these past few weeks. But I think, it's time for Stephon Diggs to step up and have a big game here. He's 18th in success rate, so he's not having a bad season in his first season over here in Houston. And I think the Texans are going to be motioning him outside more often this week to avoid Indianapolis nickelback Kenny Moore, who's one of the better nickelbacks in the league. The Colts are surrendering 24% more yards per pass play against motion than no motion this year. That's 31st in the NFL, and the Texans have the 5th highest motion rate in the NFL. So I think they're going to be sending Diggs in motion a lot this week, especially with Tank Dell kind of in a tougher matchup. It'll be battling on the outside across from Samuel Womack, who's allowing a league low 0.31 yards per cover snap.
All right, well, whose stock are you going to be selling this week?
Well, I'm going to sell Marcus Mariota stock after he averaged 8.4 yards per pass play last week, stepping in for Jaden Daniels. So assuming that Mariota is under center this week again, which I think it's trending towards that, he's going to be just in a completely different scenario. He went against the Panthers defense 31st in EPA per play allowed, and now he's going against a Bears defense that is 3rd in EPA per play allowed. And he's not going to be getting any support from his ground game because the Bears have the 4th best rush defense in the NFL according to our metrics, and top receiver Terry McLaurin, who's 9th in EPA per target, is going to be completely shut down by cornerback Jalen Johnson, who's 5th in yards per cover snap allowed.
All right, well, let's shift it over to our next segment. We've got the injury watch, and the Buccaneers are going through an absolute nightmare right now.
Yeah, they lose both Chris Godwin and Mike Evans last Monday night. Godwin 8th in EPA per target, Evans 15th in success rate. Tampa Bay's offense is deserving of about a 2-point downgrade according to our metrics, but it's not just the offense that's suffering injuries here, because it looks like the defense is going to be without 2 starting cornerbacks in Jamel Dean and Tyke Smith. Backups Tyreek Thunderbunk and Tavir Thomas are likely to struggle against Falcons wide receiver Drake London, who's 5th in success rate this season.
Looking at the Jets, they've got some good news because there are rumblings that they might have reinforcements coming in.
Yeah, it looks like they're going to be getting back starting cornerback DJ Reed after he missed last week, and Hassan Reddick reporting here. He was 15th in pressures last season, and if he's in the lineup, he's going to replace the hole that was left in New York's pass rush when edge defender Jermaine Johnson suffered that torn Achilles in week 2.
Yeah, that is great news for up front, but what's it looking like in the secondary this week?
Well, they're also, outside of Reed, it looks like they're also going to be getting back starting nickelback Michael Carter to limit Demario Douglas, who's 19th in success rate for the Patriots. But with the safeties, the Jets' injuries to Tony Adams, Ashton Davis, Chuck Clark already on the injured reserve. So that's a cluster loss. That's both starting safeties and a backup safety for the Jets. That's worth 1.5 points according to our numbers. I'm not sure Drake May is going to have enough time in the pocket to, exploit that matchup deep downfield because we got Jets edge rusher Will McDonald, who's 2nd in sacks, lined up across from DeMontre Jacobs, who is 50th in pass blocking efficiency out of 52 qualifying tackles.
Yeah, well, the Jets' offensive line looks like they might have some of their own problems coming into this game.
Yeah, they lose right guard Elijah Vera-Tucker and his backup Xavier Newman. And Vera-Tucker is having a great year. He's 7th in pass blocking efficiency. And so when you have to go all the way down to third string Jake Hansen, that's 0.7 points according to our numbers. So I think the Jets are going to have to dial up some screens to avoid collapsing pockets for Aaron Rodgers. You know, he's vulnerable to interior pressure here. And Breece Hall is 4th in yards per route run, and the Patriots are 30th in success rate allowed to opposing running backs catching passes out of the backfield.
Well, what'd you take away from Detroit's defense in their first game without Hutch?
Well, they increased the blitz rate to 33%, as opposed to 28% as it was when they had Hutchinson on the field. And I expect Aaron Glenn to call plenty more cover one to compensate for the loss of Hutchinson, especially in this game, because Tennessee's yards per pass play against cover one is just 62% of their yards per pass play against other coverages. And the Lions already are second in the NFL in cover one rate to begin with. But for Detroit's offense, they lose Jameson Williams, who's 17th in EPA per target. He's suspended for a couple of games here, and he's worth 0.7 points for our metrics. So, you know, I'm looking at this game. There's a lot going on in Titans and Lions here. The model likes over, even after accounting for the losses of Hopkins, Williams, and the matchup advantages for both defense, because, you know, Tennessee's defense is likely to be without both starting cornerbacks, L'Jarius Sneed and Chidobe Awuzie, plus the Hutchinson loss can't be overstated, like we mentioned.
It looks like the Saints' offensive line is getting some much needed pieces back after Denver's defense had 14 pressures in under 2.5 seconds last week. So that is just insanely quick pressures.
Yeah, but they're getting back. The Saints are Lucas Patrick and Cesar Ruiz, so both starting guards here. Now, Derek Carr's availability is more in doubt. It looks like it's going to be another Spencer Rattler game, and it's not necessarily an ideal matchup here for a backup quarterback, because when you got a backup quarterback in there, you want to manage, you want to give him kind of simple, manageable throws, and that would be to Alvin Kamara, right? But the Chargers are allowing a league low 26% receiving success rate to opposing running backs. And then when you got a backup quarterback in there, you want to get a ground game established, but the Chargers are second in EPA per rush allowed. So even with Chris Olave coming back, I'm not sure it's going to be a great game here for Spencer Rattler.
Yeah, I also saw that Kamara was saying his right hand is broke, so another thing to maybe keep an eye on here. But as we sit here Thursday morning, the Dallas-San Francisco game has some muddy waters. The only thing that's clear is Ayuk and McCaffrey are out.
Yeah, and we're going to need definitive statuses on Kittle, Jennings, and Deebo Samuel before doing a handicap here. And also for the Cowboys, they've got 2 all-pros on defense in Micah Parsons and Deron Bland, whose status is up in the air. So you're going to have to check back on the website to see what the final analysis is in this game, because, I mean, you just got to know who's playing in this game. There's so many important guys who we're just not clear on as we record here on Thursday morning.
All right, well, let's shift it over to our weather of the week. And what are you seeing out there, Tan?
Well, we've got 2 of the best deep passers in the NFL this week, with Buffalo heading to Seattle, but we're currently looking at 18 mile per hour sustained winds with gusts over 30 mile per hour, plus some chance of rain here. So this total not going to be able to hold at 47 if those conditions hold here, regardless of the quarterbacks on the field. Both offensive coordinators have indicated they want to emphasize the ground game, and I think this would be the game to do it if we're getting the weather that we're currently seeing here on Thursday morning.
All right, well, let's shift it over to our DraftKings player of the slate. And last week we had Amon-Ra, and he was in the Millie Maker winning lineup.
Yeah, Amon-Ra went off last week, and let's hope we can do something similar this week, although at a much lower price range. We're going to go with Audric Estime at 4,300. So Sean Payton was quoted last week saying he's not going to redshirt his rookies, and he's used to feeding 2 back. So he's indicated he want to get Estime some work alongside Javonte Williams. The Broncos are 10-point favorites here, and they have a 47% rush success rate. And we're going to see a ton of running against the Panthers defense, missing interior defender Derek Brown, rated 29th in EPA per rush allowed. So I think Estime gets something like 10 carries for 45 yards and his first NFL touchdown this week, which is more than enough to justify the $4,300 price tag.
I love that pick there, Tan. It's a little bit outside the box, but with so much unknown with that Cowboys and 49ers game, and we already gave out the bet for the Monday night game on the Giants, we're just going to move straight to our primetime prop, which is 18-9 after Mike Evans did not clear his prop. But I do want to note, he was balling out that game.
Yeah, but it's, when you're doing overs on props, you got to account for the fact that a player could get injured. And we knew Mike Evans was nursing something going into the week. He got cleared. He wasn't even on the injury report going into the game. But when an older wide receiver is nursing a hamstring injury and he tweaks his hamstring in the game, I mean, you can't be too surprised there. But this week, we're going to go with Malik Neighbors over 6.5 receptions. So Neighbors went under this prop last week in his first game back from concussion and in his debut. But in the other games he's played, he's averaging 10 receptions. And I think Dable is going to want to scheme him some touches after the poor showing last week. And I could see him getting back towards that 15 targets range, especially because Pittsburgh's defense leads the NFL in cover 3 rate, which is a favorable matchup for Daniel Jones and this Giants passing offense, averaging 24% more yards per pass play against cover 3 than other coverages. That's 8th best in the NFL.
I love it. Feed the rookie. Well, I think that will do it for our Week 8 preview. So make sure to head over to drbobsports.com where you can check out all of the free analysis for the weekend. And we'll be back next Friday to preview Week 9 of the NFL. So as always, thanks for watching and make sure to like and subscribe.